Today I want to talk about jargon. Hi, my name's Kos and welcome to the PaperThin Place. And on this channel we talk about communication, creativity and culture. Sometimes we do that through the lenses of leadership, diversity and art. And essentially what we try to do is we think about what we think about how we think, and we think about how that then impacts each other. So when we think about language, when we think about trying to communicate, I want to ask the question about jargon, because jargon is on one level helpful. It's a shortcut, it's kind of shorthand for some of the more complicated stuff that sometimes we deal with. But sometimes jargon can be really exclusive. Jargon can be this barrier that's kind of unnecessary really when we think about trying to be accessible or when we think about trying to communicate with others. Now, like I said, jargon is useful, particularly when we're talking kind of internally or with people who know and understand where we're coming from, who appreciate our vision and our values. But I guess the thing is with jargon is, if you do know that insider knowledge, if you do have that insider history, then probably you're a lot more forgiving about miscommunication or gaps in and amongst all of that communication. Now, the issue comes when you don't have that, and that doesn't always mean that you're on the outside of something. It might be that you're learning and growing and developing, or you're new to the organization or the group. When that happens, it's a similar kind of issue. You don't have that history, you don't have that previous knowledge. So jargon in the end ends up being non-inclusive. It ends up excluding people because you can never be sure, you can never be 100% sure that people are on the exact same page as you are. And one of the big factors why we use jargon is that we're lazy communicators. Sorry. Jargon is essentially convenient for us, but often inconvenient for others. So when I think about being a designer and communicating, and when I think about my work in terms of diversity, I want to be somebody who's conscious and aware that I don't want to make presumptions about people's previous knowledge. I want to be as inclusive as possible. Now, some people will counter that argument by saying, well, we've got a lot to do, or time's a pressure, or we just need to get these things out as soon as possible, and it's got to be good enough to get by. But the challenge in and amongst all that is actually in incorporating jargon into what you're trying to do. It actually counteracts what you are trying to do. It actually slows and stops or narrows that accessibility of your message. Often we make assumptions about our communication because we look at it from our perspective. But it's also worth noting that actually if you look at the national average in terms of reading age for the UK, it's a lot lower than you would actually realise. I've had conversations with people who would counter again by saying, well, we don't want to water what we're saying down. But actually, I would say that probably a better viewpoint is, how can I lower the hurdles? How can I remove the obstacles that stop me communicating with somebody? For me, I don't think it's about lowering the bar. I think it's actually more about widening the reach of what you're trying to do and who you're trying to communicate to. Actually, another thing that jargon does is that it creates kind of an us and them kind of like positioning. It's kind of a weird power trip. It creates people who think and feel that they have a superiority over other people because they have the knowledge or access to this kind of insider world. So it seems strange to me that if you were an organization, any organization that wanted to communicate anything, why would you try and narrow your band? Why would you not want to widen your reach? So the one tip I want to give you about all of this is, if you want to be accessible to a broader reach of people, be ruthless about avoiding jargon. Don't get lazy. Don't assume previous or existing knowledge. Put the extra effort in. Barrier that jargon kind of assumes, right.